A lot more. Leland Vittert picks up the coverage right now.
Chris Cuomo, good to see you back. Welcome, welcome. Missed you last night. Nice to see you again.
I was with Bill Maher doing the podcast, talked about you, Leland, said you're too handsome to succeed in this business. You break all the rules.
Is that you speaking or Bill speaking?
No, I was saying it. He said who?
Oh, all right. Well, if it was Maher, I would feel complimented. With you, I'm just scared. It is good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Great show. I never thought I should get Cuomo laughing like that. Oh, there we go.
That was good. Oh, funny. Have a good show.
He's just jet lagged. I'm not actually that funny. Here we go. Tonight, there is a storm brewing. You may not feel it, but a lot of America is seeing it on the horizon. Economic uncertainty is rattling around the American economy, and it's easy to feel scared. Stocks posted back-to-back losses after Trump escalated his trade war. The fear among American consumers watching their 401ks fall is real. American companies are equally scared about how Trump's tariffs could impact their bottom line, also your grocery bills and the cost of everything you buy. But there's one thing that no other network is telling you right now, which is how Trump's bet on tariffs could, emphasis could, pay off. We're 6 days out from April 2nd, which is when 25% tariffs are set to take effect on cars and car parts imported into the United States. President Trump is calling it Liberation Day.
It's going to make our country very rich because we're the piggy bank that everybody steals from, and they've been doing it for many years, for decades, so we're not going to let it happen.
The experts say tariffs will make Biden's inflation and supply chain crisis look like happy days. And maybe they are right. The laws of economics cannot be suspended, even by Donald Trump. But Trump's team says the action he's taking now will pay off long term with American national security and the American economy, because we're going to be less reliant on other countries for our goods. Nobody's giving that argument any weight, nor the argument that jobs will be brought back to America. So if Team Trump is right, Trump's going to be remembered as the president who upended the global trade market and made American manufacturing a powerhouse again.
Car companies and every other form of company, they're pouring back into our country at levels never seen before. We're up to, I guess, close, Howard, to $5 trillion of investments already. They're all coming in so they don't have to pay tariffs. It's very simple, because if you build your product in the USA, there is no tariff.
Okay, let's be real. Car companies are not going to be expanding their manufacturing in the U.S. for years. They may announce it now. It takes a while to build car plants. Trump wants fair trade policies and for companies to shift production back here, bring back American jobs. He believes the only way to accomplish those goals is through tariffs, by making goods that come into America from abroad cost more, prices that you and I will pay in the meantime. And there are plenty of Republicans who disagree with Donald Trump and agree with me.
Tariffs is a tax, and it will be passed on consumers.
I don't like tariffs, but then again, I don't like the president promoting tariffs. I think tariffs are a tax on the consumer.
I'm more of a free trade kind of Republican.
If you do tariffs across the board, you're raising prices on farmers, on businesses, on consumers. It's never a good idea.
There are going to be tariffs, and they tend to bring growth down. They tend to bring inflation up.
The main concern with tariffs is the short-term impact. You probably heard from economists, pundits alike, that you're going to pay more for certain products. You will. Donald Trump's admitted as much. But the argument that is not given enough weight is whether it is going to be worth it, whether the short-term pain is going to be worth the long-term gain, particularly for working-class Americans. The United Auto Workers Union President Shawn Fain applauded the president's move. He put out a statement, we told you about it last night, that reads in part, "With these tariffs, thousands of good-paying, blue-collar auto jobs could be brought back to working-class communities, the United States, within a matter of months." Timing here is key. Trump is banking on companies and countries caving to him and bringing production back to our shores fast. If they don't, that's when the economic trouble starts. As we said on this program over and over and over again, it is always a good idea to bet on America. We start tonight with Peter Navarro, Senior Counselor for Trade and Manufacturing. Peter, good to see you. Welcome back to the programs. We've been told for a long time that tariffs are part of a negotiating strategy, the art of the deal, if you will. These are going into effect next week. So are we to believe that this is no longer a negotiating strategy and that these tariffs are now the real thing that are going to take effect?
Well, Leland, these tariffs are the real thing that are going to take effect, and they have a very distinct purpose. They are designed to bring our defense industrial base back and to create great jobs for Americans at great wages. And if I may give you a little historical context, I don't know if you ever heard the term arsenal of democracy, but the arsenal of democracy back in World War II days was the notion that it wasn't just our soldiers and sailors and pilots that won that war. It was our manufacturing base. And at the time, the autos were the auto industry provided the Jeeps, the tanks, all of that. Now, let's think about how far we've fallen. And it's really important to understand that Trump tariffs on autos include auto parts, because it's the auto parts that we're missing in the equation. You start with 16 million vehicles that we buy each year as consumers. Half of those are imports, right out the door. No jobs, nothing. The factory's gone. But the other half of that is foreign content. And what the foreign countries have done using industrial policy and cheating and the like, they focused on the highest value add parts in a car, the drivetrain. It's the engines, transmissions, the drivetrain. We call that the powertrain. We make 19% of the engines
Peter,
that go into
I say this
the cars we
these
buy
are
in
all
America.
Fascinating
and
statistics.
The punchline,
I understand the statistics.
Is Japan and Germany, well, your viewers don't. The point is that they're making all the good stuff parts, we're not. And what we're trying to do is get that back. And to your timing question, I can address that as well, because this is going to happen fast.
Okay, so I guess that the question, right, is President Trump says there's going to be a short-term disruption. Everyone agrees prices are going to go up in the short term. 25% tariffs, cars become more expensive on April 3rd, right? We can all agree on that.
Let's talk about the adjustment process. We've got about 65% capacity utilization in our auto industry right now in this country. What that means is that there's tremendous
Peter, I don't need 65%. I just want give me a little bit of agreement here. Give me a little bit of agreement. On April 4th, when somebody goes to a car dealership, or a couple of weeks after, once the cars have been imported and the tariff's been paid, certain cars in America are going to be substantially more expensive. We can all agree on that. The question is, President Trump keeps saying short-term disruption.
Well, we can't all agree on the magnitude. We can't agree on the magnitude.
Okay, there's going to be some price increase. It's going to happen. Short-term disruption. That's what President Trump keeps saying. Short-term disruption. How long do you all view as the short term? When do Americans actually see the economic benefits of this?
They're going to see it immediately. Let's take the tariffs themselves. We're going to raise $100 billion in auto tariffs alone. What President Trump is going to do retroactively in the tax bill that absolutely has to get passed is a major tax credit for people who buy American content cars. So that's going to pay for a lot of the problem that you're referencing here. The auto companies are going to eat a lot of that. We're going to bring gas prices down as we're doing now. For every dollar we reduce them, it's another $1,000 in consumer spending, which we enrich them there. And over the long term, and the long term is not that long when you consider the low capacity utilization. I'm telling you, Leland, there's going to be a race, and the companies that are going to win, whether they're the big three, Stellantis, GM, and Ford, or whether it's Honda, whether it's Mercedes-Benz, they're all going to race to bring domestic content here, and we've got plenty of room to run because they put us out of business. We've got all those factories.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying the consumer's not going to pay for the tariffs, okay? Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, who was about as pro-Donald Trump as I've ever heard, says the tariffs are not a tax. Rand Paul, I think tariffs are a tax on the consumer. The consumer's going to eat some of this. You're saying short term they eat it, long term America, lights its economy on fire. The Ford CEO seems to say that the short term is not that short. Take a listen.
It's probably, 12 to 15 months before you're putting a shovel in the ground. And then it's probably another, 24 to 36 months before that plant is built and then ramps up.
So are you saying you understand the economics of the auto industry better than the CEO of Ford?
Indeed, I do, because the CEO of Ford has a vested interest in not having domestic production here. They're spread out all over the world. And I'll tell you, Honda has more domestic content in their cars than Ford has in a lot of their cars. So the point is that, yeah, if you're trying to build a new greenfield plant, it's going to take a while. But we got 65% capacity utilization. That means there's 30% at least that we can run with without worrying about inflation or supply chain bottlenecks. Leland, there's going to be a massive push to get jobs here in the capacity that we have. You got to remember, they've devastated us. They've left us in shambles here. We can get that stuff going a lot faster than greenfield investment. And it's
when you say that stuff going, what do you mean? I don't even understand what you mean when you say get that stuff going.
I mean,
you're saying that old plants are going to be brought back?
Building more engines here, building more transmissions here, building more drive chains here, building more tires here. We have the capabilities. We used to do that. We were 100% in 1970. We did everything. We were manufacturing. Right now we're a colony
I've heard your
Germany
arguments,
and Japan and Korea with respect to auto industry.
I've heard your arguments, Peter, and look, you and I have gone back and forth for years on this stuff, and I always appreciate you being willing here to come and to talk about it, and it's always better when it's in studio and we don't have this delay, and we will do that in a couple of weeks now. But consumer confidence plummets, or next week when these take effect. The portion of U.S. consumers anticipating a recession remains at a 9-month high. Americans' view of their financial future slumped to a 12-year low. If things are going to be so great, as you promise and as the president promises, why don't Americans feel that way?
Let me remind you, Leland, that all these people who are crying wolf and disaster were the same people back in the first term who said that was going to happen, and all we had was price stability and prosperity. So there's a cry wolf credibility problem.
There wasn't nearly these kind of tariffs. There weren't nearly these kind of tariffs in the first term.
Historic tariffs on China. Historic. They were massive tariffs on China. But the point is that the data that we've seen doesn't justify any concerns about recession. We're getting robust job numbers. The inflation numbers are looking good. We're seeing bond yields go down, which helps our housing and mortgage interest rates. So there's look, you and I both know that the vast majority of the media doesn't like the Trump administration, and they're going to propagate the inflation story. They're going to propagate the recession story. And to the extent that that's going to influence consumer confidence, that's irresponsible, because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The media look, they hate it. They hate Trump more than they love America, and they're doing anything they can. And this is another issue. Just look at what happened the last time.
Well, you're always
look at what happened.
You're always
said
welcome.
The same
Peter,
thing. You could go back and look at the clips.
I gotta go. We got to go. You're always welcome to come back, and I want you to come back next week in studio.
Yes,
Promise
sir.
me you will, to talk about as things take effect. Good to see you, sir. Peter Navarro,
I like it back there. I don't like the delay either.
We got the
Take care.
We got the tape marked. All right, President Biden set the standard in his administration that nobody gets fired, no matter how badly you screw up. So is President Trump just following his lead?
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the Go. I'm Connell McShane, and this is America's fastest growing cable news network, delivering fact-based, unbiased news from all sides.
Welcome back. The fallout over Signalgate proves a new sad reality in American politics. There are no rules, and there is no shame. Trump, or Team Trump, is playing by the rules set by Joe Biden. The facts don't matter. The embarrassment doesn't matter. Tribalism is all that matters in Washington. All this despite some damning new information about the information shared in an unsecured chat. The Wall Street Journal is out with exclusive reporting. Israeli-supplied intelligence and airstrike discussed in Signal chat. Officials say Houthi missile expert was tracked with the help of Israeli-linked human intelligence source in Yemen. This kind of stuff leaking and getting out is what gets people killed. I've worked in the Middle East. I've been in dangerous places with teams doing dangerous things. This is the kind of thing that gets people killed. People who are trying to help America killed when you're sloppy with this kind of information. We've been clear on the show that the use of the app by the Trump administration was reckless. The new information, this new reporting, makes it even worse, and it also gives Democrats more firepower.
I think Secretary Hegseth should go in terms of anyone who puts that kind of information on a signal chain, that is violation 101.
Both Hegseth and Walz need to resign or be fired.
This is criminal behavior, right? They likely violated multiple laws.
Hegseth and Walz are not capable of continuing to perform in these roles.
Patty Murray, in that sense, seems a little out of her depth, but I think reasonable people can agree Hegseth and Walz aren't going anywhere, especially Hegseth because of his relationship with Trump. Could change. But for President Trump, firing one of his loyal aides gives the opposition a win. And the fact of the matter is the previous administration set the precedent of keeping staff around despite horrible mistakes. Case in point, former Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who oversaw the deadly bombing at Abbey Gate, where 13 American service members were killed.
Do you have any regrets about the Afghan withdrawal?
Brett, I regret the fact that we lost 13 of our finest at Abbey Gate. I regret that we lost 10 civilians in an errant strike.
You can just hear the emotion in his voice. He's totally torn up. Austin kept his job despite never taking responsibility. Jake Sullivan never took responsibility. He's the guy who missed the October 6th attacks or October 7th attacks. Austin spent days in the hospital and never told the White House. He's in the snap count to launch nuclear weapons. Never told the White House he was in the hospital. That is beyond reckless, and yet Joe Biden let him keep his job. In the past, America's best and brightest would have been utterly embarrassed to have made any of these mistakes. They would have resigned on their own account. But the paradigm in politics has totally shifted. Now there is no such thing as shame. With us now, Noah Rothman, senior writer at the National Review, Ashley Hayek, America First Works president, and mother of, I believe, 5. Nice to see you both. Noah, good thing that the politics of shame is over?
No, it's not a good thing, especially if you describe it in that way. Look, we are only 100
Is there another way to describe it?
Well, we are 100 days into this administration. And in that window, it's a little hard to judge what the Trump administration's legacy is going to be with regard to firing. I mean, your theory is as good as any theory that I've heard, which is that the president sort of defers to the legacy that Joe Biden set, by which I think we can boil it down to Joe Biden viewed calls for resignations as being nakedly political. He was loyal to a fault. He thought it would all blow over, and cumulatively, it came back to bite him. But individually, he thought it could live through it. Now, Donald Trump has his own legacy to follow. His administration saw the turnover of 14 cabinet secretaries, to say nothing of lower Senate confirmed posts. So he's got his own record to uphold, including his own catchphrase, "You're fired." So I wouldn't be so, confident that we're going to see the president stand by his people, especially if they become liabilities for him.
Actually, that's an interesting point I think Noah makes. Is Donald Trump 2.0 different? I think 1.0, he wanted to somehow seek the approval of Washington establishment and the New York Times and the Sunday shows and everything else. Hence, when he viewed people as sort of freelancing, or he had hired people who were not full MAGA, he allowed it to go on and then he fired them. that's different this time around, is it not?
Well, first of all, I would hardly compare this administration, the Trump administration, to the Biden administration. Joe Biden didn't know where he was half the time, nor could he sign an executive order for that matter, whereas President Trump has signed over 50 already. And what's also surprising to me is none of those Democrat senators ever called out Joe Biden or his administration or called for the resignation of leadership.
Due respect, Ashley, and I appreciate the talking points trashing Joe Biden. It's not really what we do here. It's not what we do here. I appreciate it. But I think there's a larger question here, which is Donald Trump promised to come in and be better. That's what Republicans said, is we want to be better than the Biden administration, not just the same. So I think you're proving my point in the whataboutism world that Republican senators aren't criticizing Pete Hegseth and Michael Waltz and Donald Trump for not holding them responsible, which they're doing the exact same thing you're criticizing Democrats for. You're making my point.
Let's look at the outcome of this mission. The outcome of this mission is that a terrorist organization has been taken down. A terrorist organization that was going after American ships for the past 18 months of the Biden administration. President Trump executed on a mission. It was a successful mission. There were no details in that signal chat.
Okay,
there were no
Ashley, I appreciate it.
It was a successful mission.
Ashley, those were the talking points 3 days ago. We got to get something a little bit better. Pam Bondi talking about whether there'll be a criminal probe. Take a listen.
If you want to talk about classified information, talk about what was at Hillary Clinton's home that she was trying to bleach bit, talk about the classified documents in Joe Biden's garage that Hunter Biden had access to.
Noah, I think I'm sensing something with Pam Bondi here, that they're concerned, for lack of a better term, because it was wrong when Hillary Clinton did it. Republicans made that point epically clear. But how does what she said then make her any different than what Republicans accused Merrick Garland of doing?
I'm not sure the answer to that. There are obviously distinctions, but the grand point that you're attempting to make, that partisanship seems to govern how this DOJ is conducting itself, is a parallel. And you can't deny it, that there's a parallel between this and previous administrations, including the last administration. What really sticks out to me is where Congress is, which is nowhere. Congress is the branch that is empowered to investigate. Congress is the branch that is empowered to fire other members of other branches. It seems inclined to defer to the administration to police itself, and the administration doesn't seem all that inclined to police itself. So yes, you're going to give Democrats a lot of ammunition to say we're going to have to get the majority back in order to see oversight of this administration.
Right, and Democrats weren't willing to publish themselves on the other side. I mean, that's sort of where we're at. That shame, embarrassment doesn't exist anymore in Washington, which I guess is kind of sad, because my dad always taught me that politicians were worth admiring, and their character was. But there you go. I digress. Noah, Ashley, thank you very much. We appreciate it. On to politicians of the other side. California Governor Gavin Newsom is on a quest to reinvent. I hadn't seen that graphic yet. That's pretty good. He's on a quest to reinvent himself, and the quest continues. Last week, he radically changed his view on boys and girls sports. First, he was for it. Now he's against it. Then he came out as against the woke term Latinx, and he claimed he had never used Latinx. There's lots of tape of him using Latinx. Now his podcast is taking reinvention to a new level and just making stuff up whole cloth. Here he is talking about his state's tax system with New York Times author Ezra Klein.
People talk about the high taxes in California. It's just BS. 16 states tax their poorest residents more than we tax our top 1%. 40% of our residents pay lower taxes than in Florida and Texas. 80% of our residents pay slightly above average taxes. So this notion of even being a high tax state is BS.
Well, you can believe Gavin Newsom or your lying eyes. The states he mentioned, California has the highest sales tax. California, number one, 7.25%. Texas, 6.25%. Florida, 6%. Now on to income tax. California has the highest income tax at 13.3% for individuals earning more than $1 million a year. Neither Texas nor Florida have income taxes. With us now, Chris Cillizza, NewsNation contributor, senior advisor to the DGA Group. So I feel like we're setting up, and what Newsom is setting up for is, hey, I want to make America California, but I'm going to be a little less socially woke.
Well, that won't work. I mean, I feel like we kind of learned that lesson in the past. It was funny. I was laughing listening to Newsom's answer to Ezra Leland. It reminded me of getting called on in math class when I didn't know the answer. And I'd say, 40% of 60% of 15 divided by 8, a bunch of numbers. It's hard to follow.
How'd that work out for you, Cillizza?
Look what I do now for a living, my friend. I don't work in the math. I'm not a mathematician. I think that, broadly speaking, I actually think, I know it's really transparent and it's obvious what he's doing with this podcast where he talks to people like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. But I'll be honest, I actually think that's kind of smart, because I think the problem for Gavin Newsom is if he is associated as a California liberal, he has no chance, right? We've seen that movie. That didn't work for Kamala Harris, and it won't work for Gavin Newsom. So I actually think that piece of it is smart. I do think that kind of trying to relitigate the idea that California is not a very liberal state on policy, particularly tax policy, but policy more generally, gosh, that's a really uphill fight.
Yeah, and you think about California Policy Institute, California crime rate, shoplifting up 40%, robberies up 11%, auto theft up 8%, on and on and on. And we saw this with Joe Biden, right? Telling Americans, no, you're wrong. The economy is actually doing great. Gavin Newsom, no, you're wrong. California doesn't have high taxes. And you can almost see him say, like, no, you're wrong. California is totally safe, because if you divide 1.7 by 39.9 and you only look at crimes committed, between the hours of 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. on Tuesdays that are odd numbered days, things are great here.
Yeah.
Is telling the American people they're wrong ever a winning strategy?
Oh, unless you can. Probably the answer, honestly, I'm thinking the answer is probably no, even if you're right. He's not right in this situation, but telling the American people they're wrong, even when you're right and they actually are wrong, is probably not a winning political strategy, honestly, Leland. But I just think, I think Gavin Newsom is doing interesting things, but it's just going to be really hard. He's going to have been the governor of California for 8 years. Right, when he eventually runs, when he might run for president. He's going to run for president, right? So I just think that's going to be hard. I just think, because I think Democrats are gun shy because they've gone through this. They've seen what it looked like. They saw Comrade Kamala work. Gavin Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco before he was the governor of California. It's just a long record. I get what he's trying to do. Like, from a purely political sort of strategic perspective, I think it's the right thing. I just am not sure it's going to work, because, to your point, just a lot of data there that would suggest that what he's trying to do.
Well, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data, and there's a lot of tape. Right? There's the data, there's the tape, there's how people feel, there's the amount of people who have left California, on and on. If we flip this on its head and look at the Gavin Newsom sort of engaging in this different way, is there something else that he's trying to do here? Is it that he's trying to clear the field? We think about possible Democratic candidates: Kamala Harris, Whitmer, Buttigieg, Tim Walz, good luck with that, Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, Wes Moore, Andy Beshear, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He's sort of trying to prove he has star power, maybe not apprentice star power like primetime network television star power, but like, I can do it.
Look, I think he rightly recognizes there's a gigantic leadership vacuum within the Democratic Party at the moment, right? There is, if we asked 100 people on the street who's the leader of the Democratic Party, my guess is Kamala Harris would get the most votes, because that's the name people know, right? But I don't think anybody looks at her and thinks that's the future leader of the Democratic Party.
I hate to correct you on any issue of politics because you're smarter than me, but I think there was a poll about that, and don't know was the number one answer.
Right. And so look, Gavin Newsom is not stupid. Whatever you think of Gavin Newsom is stupid. He understands there's a vacuum and there is what the party clearly needs to do is not be. I talked to a Democratic pollster named John Anzalone yesterday, who was Biden and Hillary's pollster in 2020 and 2016. And he said he sits in these focus groups post-election, and the two words that come up more often than anything else when you ask people about Democrats are weak and woke. Well, you can't win with that. And Gavin Newsom, I think, is addressing that. The issue is like, and this happens all the time in politics, the message I actually think is right. Messenger is more problematic because he's the governor of California. Yeah, I mean, if Andy Beshear was doing this, that's more interesting.
Yeah, I'll go one step further, though, and go back to the segment from before, which is the tribalism makes it so it may not matter. The fact we're sort of in a post-fact world, post-chain world, and everything else.
You can kind of create your own reality. There's no question. Brent, take care.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom lives in an interesting one. Whatever he's taking, I wish he would share. First wrote about this in War Notes. That's your chance for an inside look at the show every day. And it is free. Warnotes.com and subscribe. You'll be delighted and smarter when you check your email at 7:05 p.m. every day. The left keeps mocking Trump about taking over Greenland. Oh, it's crazy. But what if Greenland could save the planet from global warming? Will the left give Trump a win to save the planet when we come back?
You're listening to On Balance with Leland Vittert on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
Tomorrow, Vice President Vance, his wife, along with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, will visit Greenland. And the left will scream foul. Donald Trump says he wants it. Denmark controls Greenland, says he cannot have it. And for the left, Trump can't have Greenland because it's a power grab. Anything Trump wants, they're going to be against. Never mind that Greenland could actually save the planet from global warming. This is from the far left magazine, the Grist magazine. Beneath Greenland's ice lies a climate solution, a new geopolitical battleground China now has a stranglehold on. The market for rare earth elements responsible for 70% of production globally. One way to meet that demand and for the world to diversify control over the rare earths is to mine Greenland. You mine Greenland, you get the rare earth metals, you can make all of the things that make a green planet possible, and you don't have to rely on China. Lauren Wright, NewsNation political contributor, Princeton University political scientist, is with us now. Lauren, good to see you as always. Will the issue of fighting Trump, pun intended, trump the left's fight against the existential crisis of climate change?
Yes, and I think there is an apathy on the left about which country delivers us from the climate change threat. I mean, I think they wouldn't want Trump to get credit for that. And so they definitely don't see the America First angle of this, if there is one.
Okay. That said, when explained to the American people, hey, maybe we don't want to invade Greenland, but we'd like the stuff there.
Yes.
How does that play, not necessarily with the American First types, because they'll do anything Trump says, but with the middle of America?
Well, they don't really care about this issue. And frankly, how Americans feel about it is not nearly as important as how people in Greenland feel about it. They need to want sovereignty from Denmark, which they absolutely do. 80% of them do. And then it's truly 50-50 on whether they like this idea of becoming American citizens or having some kind of compact of free association with us, and those that are offended by Trump's rhetoric. And so it's a really diplomatic exercise that Trump needs to do to get what he wants, and I don't know if he can.
Okay, so J.D. Vance heads to Greenland tomorrow. He and his wife, or his wife was originally going to go dog sledding. I think because you point out there's some people in Greenland who don't really like the U.S.'s idea very much. She's not going dog sledding anymore. Instead, they're going to visit a U.S. military base. Here is the vice president.
And you know, there was so much excitement around Usha's visit to Greenland this Friday that I decided that I didn't want her to have all that fun by herself, and so I'm going to join her. Unfortunately, leaders in both America and in Denmark, I think, ignored Greenland for far too long. That's been bad for Greenland. It's also been bad for the security of the entire world. We think we can take things in a different direction, so I'm going to go check it out.
Subtle change of tone, right? From we're going to invade to, hey, we're going to come tell you what we can do for you.
Well, Trump, to be fair, is still saying we're going to get it one way or another. He hasn't changed his rhetoric at all, but Vance is a little bit softer around the edges, and that's probably the smarter move here. I mean, we tried this in 1946, post-World War II, when America was the most popular ever, and it didn't work. So, I have limited confidence, but the question of whether it would be good for us, I think, is not even a question. Of course, militarily, economically, strategically, it would be great. I just don't know if it would get done.
All right, well, there you go. J.D. Vance with his coat on, his parka tomorrow in Greenland. Lauren, thank you very much, as always. We all agree that the people that are supposed to protect people's health, the CDC, the FDA, have done a very questionable job in the past decade. I'll add NIH to that. But is firing everyone going to make it better? Today, Secretary of HHS, Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., announced deep cuts to the department he runs. And it is to be determined how America's aging population will feel about those cuts. 3,500 cut from the FDA, 2,400 from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and 1,200 from the National Institutes of Health. Chris Cuomo, you just saw, spoke to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about it.
How do you give confidence to all of the individuals and parents and families that need the services that you provide, and they hear they're going to be cuts?
We're not going to cut services. We're not going to cut Medicaid. We're not going to cut Medicare. We're going to continue. We're going to provide services, but more efficiently.
With us now, former New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, also fresh off filling in for Chris Cuomo last night. Great job. Welcome, welcome. When the Trump administration announced the cuts to USAID, we said nobody's going to care in the rest of America. In fact, people would be thrilled that foreign aid is done. Same with the Department of Education, because pretty simple, education quality and results have gone down and funding have gone up. People don't think they're getting a good deal. Do people buy into that the way to fix the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, that have had some very questionable outcomes, especially over the past few years, is by firing thousands of people?
Well, they don't think fixing it is by hiring more people, that's for sure. So I think folks know there's a lot of excess bureaucracy in Washington. And whether it's the CDC or the FDA or any of the number of hundreds of sub-agencies out there, there's always room to cut and tighten things up. As the secretary said, the key is in the services, right? Folks are going to be okay with all of this until they feel or not feel what happens. In the case of education, is it going to fundamentally change the opportunities my child has in the classroom? People mostly understand no. It's really education's getting rid of that at the federal level is not going to impact what happens in your classroom, really. So they're ready to move on and understand it. Is this going to fundamentally affect not Medicaid and Medicare, but there's a lot of other services. There's SAMHSA mental health grants. There's DD grants, right, for the disabled community.
Right.
There's a variety of different programs out there. So they got to see how it pinches. That'll fall on the states, I think, a lot to kind of help clear out some of that bureaucracy, keep those services going, and reinstill with good messaging.
There's the services side of this.
It's going to be okay.
I get that. There's the services side of this, but I'm a Reagan guy. My dog is named Dutch for a reason. And Reagan always used to say, take any three letters of the alphabet, put them in whatever order you want, and you will find a federal agency that we don't need. Completely agreed. That said, I'm thinking about the FDA and food safety. I'm thinking about the CDC. And if we have some other pandemic, not that they distinguished themselves in the last one, but especially with the FDA and food safety, the next time we have some huge salmonella outbreak and it comes out that there weren't enough inspectors, doesn't that come back to bite the administration?
Look, theoretically, but again, they're not getting rid of. There's thousands of people within the FDA, thousands and thousands that aren't being gotten rid of, right? So they're really going after just trying to trim things down, make things efficient, speed up the processes, right? Things that would take 2 years for approval maybe can now take 6 months, or things that needed 100 lawyers before only need 3 lawyers now, or things that were at the federal level go back to the state level, right? So there's a variety of different ways you can get away with not needing the federal employee.
Yeah, or if drug approvals take longer, then that's a different issue. Great job last night. This clip caught our eye. Take a listen.
Uh-oh.
I know Governor Palin may be able to see Russia from where she is, but it's astounding to me that she can't see the destruction of her state, the fires, the floods, the people who are losing their livelihoods.
All right, what was going through your head from Russia from my house? You were such a pro. You just never let it faze you.
So Palin, we're all governors. Palin and Inslee couldn't be on more of the opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to energy and basically every political issue. So I kind of just let those two run at it. And Jay Inslee's continuing the world's going to end because of climate change. Yeah. Wildfires are destroying Alaska. You did a great job.
Look,
we're going to drill, baby, drill, and bring economic prosperity. It was great. A lot of fun.
You did great. You did great. All right. Good to see you as always. Chris Sununu from New Hampshire, thank you, sir. One thing you're going to be talking about tomorrow when we come back. Thanks for listening to News Nation on the Go. I'm Leland Vittert. This is America's fastest growing cable news network, delivering fact-based, unbiased news from all sides. Tomorrow on the program this weekend, there are massive rallies against Tesla. Important question. What happens if nobody shows up? It's increasingly looking like that is going to happen. We'll tell you why tomorrow.